Hey there, it's Ingrid Blackburn, and welcome. Today is the Kind of Batty release. This is available now. It's the new Halloween release and fall release by Catherine Pooler. And if you're new to my channel, hey, hit that red subscribe button. I would love to have you come back from time to time, or maybe have me pop up in your feed. Right here, I'm showing you that I do have a supply list in case you're interested in anything that I use today. That makes it nice and easy for you to shop, and you're going to help support my channel by clicking those links below. I also have a link to the blog hop. There's prizes, so you don't want to miss out on that. Now, here is what we're going to create today. We have a really fun Halloween scene. This is Spooky Hollow, and that's the name of the stamp set. Designed by Natalie Green, a new illustrator for Catherine Pooler Designs. It's very exciting, so why don't we get started? Now, I have created actually the house. I've already stamped it onto some watercolor paper, and I stamped it a second time using some blackjack ink just on some masking paper. And you can see here I'm cutting out this little tiny space in between. So it's important to remember that that piece is there, because when we go to create our sky, you want to make sure that that kind of shines through that area. So that's what I'm doing right there. I sped that up super fast so you don't have to sit through it. And I'm just kind of pointing to that. And that is a mask that we will use later on when we go ahead and color our scene. So first up, we need to actually color our scene. So I've created a mask here to use later, and that is a hill. Just kind of getting a feel for where my stamps are going to go. Again, sped this up super fast. I hope that's okay. I know some of you like to see it all real speed, but it would take an hour to make this project, and I don't want you to have to sit through all that. So that is a great stamp set. I'm using several of the neutral inks. A couple of them are new, Sandcastle and Over Coffee and Twilight. Catherine added 3 new inks to her neutral line, creating 6 neutrals right now. And I'm just kind of stamping those out or smushing them onto one of the acrylic blocks that Catherine has. Love her blocks. If you've never tried them, you have to try them. They're so much more lightweight than other blocks on the market. And they have this really great rounded edge. They're not too tall. They're literally the perfect block. So I've created a watercoloring palette. I have a couple tools there, extra piece of watercolor paper and some paper towel. I have a water brush as well. And you can see I kind of just swatched out the colors I'm using. Right here I'm taking some of that Over Coffee, that medium brown shade. It's a nice color. It has a little bit of warmth to it. And I am coloring in the little wooden boards. The house is boarded up, so that's what I'm doing right now. Leaving them light. I don't want them to be too dark, and I'm doing this part full speed, but I'm going to speed it up really quick in a second. So if you don't want to sit through and watch everything as I'm doing it in live time, that way we can get through it a little faster. But you can see I'm utilizing some of the water from the pen. I have a very wet brush without being too wet. You have to kind of find your own happy medium. And that's where I use that paper towel as needed. Doing a little bit of icing on the cake for the door. Want that to be a little darker, as well as the wooden beams that are on the actual porch. The base of the porch I'm going to do in Sandcastle, not Sandcastle, in Over Coffee, which is the same color as those boards. You can see I'm clearing off my watercolor brush before going into another color. And now I'm very quickly coloring in the roof, and I'm using Twilight, the new shade. It's a lighter gray. It's actually kind of like a medium gray. I'm also going to drop in a little bit of blackjack on some of those tiles there, and I'm creating the walls of the house also in blackjack. You know, this scene is really a nighttime scene. It's a twilight. So for me, the house can be dark. It doesn't need to be funky colors. I mean, you can of course make it anything you want, you know, whatever you have in your mind. If you want purple, do purple. You want pink, whatever you want. For me, I was kind of going for dark and dreary and kind of moody. That was really kind of what I wanted the scene to be, with a slight pop of color. So next up, now that we've colored in our roof, we're going to add a little blackjack, and that's to where those lines are on the tiles. I'm trying not to add too much, because blackjack is much darker than Twilight, and a little bit goes a long way when you're using just a hair. So just adding a little bit, doing several tiles, and kind of using my water brush to just kind of expand that, going around on the window panes, adding, you know, like darker trim touches. And then now I'm adding some sauna to the windows, going in between those boards, as well as that creaky door. Don't forget that. You can hear it now, can't you? That was not a very good creak, but was my attempt at it. So look at that. It looks like a very, very spooky little house. Now, I have some stairs here, and we're going to stamp those in Twilight. And I'm going to have these go all the way to the bottom, and because to me, we're going to have a hill. So this is envisioning those really, really steep steps that are going up through like a mossy or grassy hill up to a house up there, somewhere where you don't want to go, you're afraid to go. And that's what those are going to be. They don't look like much right now, but trust me, they will be eventually. And now I've got some headstones. These are going to be over on the left side. I'm going to have a tree there, so I'm going to kind of get an idea of where those are, because I don't want to stamp them and then have the tree cover them up. So I'm doing those as well. And I got a little spot there. I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. This is a clean water brush right here. So I'm just quickly going over that. You can see there's a slight mark left, but I got rid of most of it. And then I'm taking a clean portion of that towel and just dabbing that away. And look at that, it's gone. So don't worry if you get stuff on there. Red sometimes can be a little difficult, but you can manage to get a lot of it up. Now I'm just kind of adding a little bit of a darker shadow to the stone steps. You know, this part was a little tricky for me. It didn't translate the way it was going to in my head. I think I probably could have worked on a little bit more, but I wanted to get this project up for you. So I'm adding a little bit of shadow there to the sides of the headstones. I'm going to add a little bit to the base. Now I do apologize. Here I'm showing you how to get your masks down. I'm also securing the base of the card so that it doesn't move, because I'm going to do some ink blending for the sky and for the base of the hill. But you know what? I didn't realize that my camera wasn't on. So I went and I was showcasing everything for you, thinking that I was filming it, and I'm so sorry it wasn't. But here is that portion. I have lots of ink blending videos on my channel, and I'm going to link to a couple down in the description so that you can see how I do ink blending. But I just wanted to show you how I mask that off. So now I'm coming in, now that I've added some green tea color, which is kind of an olive green. It's in the Spa line. I used mostly Spa colors by Catherine Pooler, with the exception of a purple in the very, very top of the sky. And I'm just coming back in here with some of the colors, more neutralish colors from my palette, and kind of adding a little bit of detail, kind of some little grassy spots, a little bit more along the edges of the hill, at the base of the fence, which I've stamped. You know, just kind of adding some shadow. Maybe there's a couple more tufts of grass there, trying to define that hill a little bit more, because in my head, the house is kind of perched up on a hill and there's a steep little slope right there heading to the headstones. So I don't know if you can kind of envision that that I have in my head. I'm kind of trying to translate it. I think I do a pretty good job. Go ahead and ink that up with some Midnight ink. Now, let me tell you, Midnight ink is an archival ink, and it is super, super deep, rich black. You know, Ranger has an ink out there, a black ink that I've used for years. And quite honestly, because I do a lot of mixed media, and quite honestly, lately, I've really been using the Midnight a lot more than I have that. And I've been getting a much deeper result. So if you haven't tried it, I definitely encourage you to do so. Now, it does stain photopolymer stamps because it is an archival ink, but that's okay. It doesn't bother me. You just don't want to smush it down because it's a foam pad. Now look at that. Now that tree, you can see it would be fine like that. I'm going to actually elongate it, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. I'm getting a couple little pieces down, my little scaredy cat at the base of the stairs. You know, the proportion of that is really meant to be a little more further away. Now I have this raven that I'm putting on top of the roof. He's perfect. Love that. And you can see the scene kind of coming together. I've stamped a couple fences. You can bend your fence if you want it to seem like it's on a hill. And then we're going to go ahead and add fence over to the other side, because I'm trying to give you a little bit of foreground, trying to make it feel like you have to get into the scene a little bit. And we're going to accomplish that as well with some shading later on. It's really starting to come together. I'm really loving how it's turning out. So now that our scene is really starting to shape up, we're going to add some more detail. We definitely have to add some to the sky, but first I want to elongate that tree. Now, I wasn't 100% certain how it was going to look. And, you know, the nice thing about, you know, photopolymer stamps is you have it on acetate, and it's very easy to position over your card to get an idea of what it's going to look like. You can see I've pulled out a couple more stamps. I have some stars, this moon, I've got a witch, I have a couple bats. But I need to see how this looks first. So I stamped it using blackjack ink. You don't want to use your archival because it'll leave a mark. And you can see here, that's what it's going to look like if I elongate it. Now that means not ink it up completely, and I apologize because when I was inking it up, it was off camera. So I did not ink up the lower branches, only the trunk going upward. And you can see there, I probably should have used a Misty so that I could do it a second time and get that totally perfect. But I actually am fairly decent at, sorry, there's my head, at actually position things over. You know, 20 years of stamping, it comes with the territory. Now, that bottom part, I didn't have it inked up as much as I wanted to, but that's okay. I just took my watercolor brush and dabbed it on the midnight ink pad later on. Now, you could do this too. You could stamp that up there or bring it all the way over to the right is probably what I would do there, and have branches. And that gives you that foreground, makes you feel like you're really stepping into the scene. Very, very important in scenic stamping to have some foregrounded images. So you can see here I decided not to do that, which was good. I didn't want to do that third time. Instead, just grabbing some of that archival ink and filling in that gap. And you know what? It looked perfect. You would never know that looking at it close up. Love my super, super ginormous tree. It really makes it feel like that tree is closer to me and the house is further back. That's what we achieved by doing that. And that's important in scenic stamping. So I'm just mounting using all these. Look, aren't these blocks great? Those, I tell you, those small little blocks and those round blocks. I have 8 little round blocks, and I think I have 4 or 5 of the little small square ones. I use them constantly. Stamping down my silhouette images in my midnight ink. I love these. You know, what's really great about this collection is it's all designed by one illustrator. So you have these little details. There's a ribbon detail at the very top of the house. That is a stamp in a companion set, which is actually called Everything But the Broom. You know, we have little tiny things that are from the bats in this one, for instance, look exactly like the bats in the background stamp, which is awesome because everything goes so well together. And you can see here I did the same thing. I stamped a couple bats, and that little piece of acetate is actually the backing sheet to my stamp set. And this gave me an opportunity to kind of see what those bats are going to look like, which one to put down, because this top one felt like he was a little further away than the bottom one. So by having the top one a little higher in the sky, it kind of gives that illusion again, you know, perspective, distance, that again helps to translate into a little more of a realistic scene. So I love to scenic stamp. Love to scenic stamp. I'm so excited that Catherine finally has a couple little lined art images and some scenic stamps. Look at that. Isn't it cute? I love this little house, this little guy. Those little stars, the wonky stars, there's 3 of them in here, and there's a trio star in the Everything But the Broom set. They are so perfect. And there's matching dies for everything too. Yeah, you'll really, really enjoy this collection. Now I'm adding a little bit of midnight, and I left this full speed here. Little midnight around the edge. I want you to note what the project looks like right now before I do this, and then what it's going to look like afterward, because adding this little frame around it, especially a little bit more intense on the corners, it's going to really make this project. This is the final touch that you really need to pull this project off to make it really pop, you know, and make it believable. Because what you're doing is you're not only just framing it, but you're pulling somebody into the scene. So it kind of gives that illusion of you're walking out of the dark forest and you're coming upon this scene that is kind of lit in the moonlight, you know, and you're coming out of the darkness, but you're coming towards this, and it's twilight, and you've got all these spooky little Halloween things that are frightening all around. But yeah, it is very important. So I do that in a lot of my scenes because it helps to again, create some of that grounding foreground things, that items that really help to make the scene a little more realistic. And what I'm doing here is I am keeping my actual sponge very angled, so that it's, right now it's very, very small going onto the project, but in general I'm keeping it angled where only the back side, the part all the way to the right, because I'm right-handed, is on the paper, and the rest is lifted so that I don't create any funky lines. It's just awesome. And Midnight is perfect for that because it's so deep and so rich. Very, very cool. So that's pretty much it. I do have some close-ups for you here, so definitely check these out because I zoom in really, really close so you can see some of the detail. Look at this. Isn't it awesome? I love all the little nooks and crannies, and look at all those little cracks in the house. They're so perfect. Now, it's really funny because I'm not a big Halloween person, but I'm having so much fun with these stamps because they're funky, they're wonky, they're totally my style. I think you would love that. Look at that raven and those bats. Oh my gosh. I have two other projects, one that rocks the bat background stamp and the spider web and has all sorts of black, deep, dark sparkle. So definitely check out the blog. Leave comments all along the way because it's a blog hop and there are gift certificates that are being given away. Hey, why not? You never know. You might win. Thanks for joining me. Here are a couple other videos for you to check out some scenic cards, and I look forward to seeing you next time because you subscribed, right? Leave me a thumbs up. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.